Big fluff.
What is this? Come on, give it back. What is it? Give it back. It was on the floor. I didn't know it was a state secret. My freshman philosophy professor assigned this exercise in forward thinking. He called it a bucket list. We were supposed to make a list of all the things we wanted to do in our lives before we... Kick the bucket. Yeah. Cutesy. Anyway, I wrote down things like make $1 million, first black president, young man's wishes. I was gonna redo the list, but then... Help a complete stranger for the good. Laugh until I cry. Not to be judgmental, but this is extremely weak. Well, it's pointless now. I would argue the exact opposite.
Hey everybody, I'm Joel Murphy.
And I'm Andy McIntyre.
And this is Silver Linings Playback, the podcast where we watch maligned movies and we find their silver linings.
And it's episode 200.
200. We did it.
Good night, everybody.
It does seem crazy, and mostly, I think, because we started this podcast in the year 2020, and as everyone knows, no amount of years since then have felt like a real year. So
yeah, no, not one.
It feels like just like yesterday and also 100 years ago that we started this.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing that we've been doing this almost 4 years. We've done 200 episodes and broken our psyches in terms of movie watching.
Yeah, we're broken people now. We were like the version of Morgan Freeman that wrote his bucket list. We were young idealists when we started, and now the world has shaped us and broken us, and we don't have those dreams anymore. That's how long we've been doing this.
Yeah, that we've gone from The Phantom Menace to Garfield: A Tale of Two Kitties to Star Crash to Bucket List.
Yep. Yeah. It's a progression. I don't know towards what, but towards something for sure.
But this also wraps up our Missteps by Oscar Winners month. So
right.
There we go.
Yes. Yeah. We've been watching, movies that people who have won Oscars, and then they went on to make movies that were maligned after they won their Oscars because they don't take them back. So you can just Nicolas Cage as much as you want once you get that Oscar, and they'll let you.
And one could argue that no one has Nicolas Caged as much as Nicolas Cage.
Yes. No, for sure. And we like what I love about this is we actually get sort of a 2-for-1 in this, because most of all the other movies that we've done this month have had one Oscar winner, but this has 2 Oscar winners in both Jack Nicholson, who, we were talking about this before, is a 3-time.
He is the most awarded male actor. Yeah.
And Morgan Freeman, who has been nominated a lot of times, but has won once.
For $1 Million Baby.
For $1 Million Baby. And then also it's even directed by an Academy Award nominated director in Rob Reiner, who is a criminally underrated director with a sneakily impressive filmography that includes A Few Good Men and Stand By Me.
And Princess Bride.
I mean, he has it's an eclectic...
and When Harry Met Sally.
Yeah, it's an eclectic group of movies, and also you'd be hard pressed to say what a Rob Reiner movie is definitively, because
he's not like an auteur director that has a trademark style or anything, because he's done. I mean, you have like the very Aaron Sorkin influenced A Few Good Men. You have the delightful fantasy fairy tale A Princess Bride. You have North.
Well, and I think
movies.
Yeah, that's interesting, too. I never thought of that until you said it, because A Few Good Men is a Sorkin script. Princess Bride is a William Goldman script. Obviously, Stand By Me is a Stephen King story. So it's like, I do think that he's a good director and that he just sort of takes on the material. He sort of looks at what the writer did and adapts his style to the writer's style, which is a good mark of a director. But yeah, we tend to remember directors as like auteur, these are the choices that a director makes. This is how you know you're watching them.
When you think about like the list of all-time directors, Kubrick had a very distinct style. Hitchcock, Spielberg, Tarantino, Howard Hawks, like all these guys had very distinct styles. That John Ford, you knew you were watching one of those movies, a Kurosawa movie. It's a Kurosawa movie as soon as the credits come up. But yeah, Rob Reiner, it's more like when you see that directed by Rob Reiner, you're like, huh.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool. Huh. That's neat.
Hey,
that's
nice.
Neat. Yeah. Yes. Well, all right. So I think we've set this up a lot. Before we get into the movie proper, though, we should say one thing that we haven't said yet, which is that we had our own personal bucket list, I think, when we started this show. And, maybe this movie inspired us, maybe 200 episodes inspired us, or maybe it all just came together, baby. But we have two things that are worth knowing that we're going to share with you.
Yes.
One is you can now see our beautiful faces. We will be posting videos of the episodes, starting with this one.
Yeah, this will be our first YouTube episode.
So yeah, you can find us on YouTube. I'll post those links on our social and on HoboTrashcan. You can find it all there.
It'd be weird if you watched this on YouTube for the first time and then this would all seem really pointless.
Yeah, you're like, well, I've been watching you for 7 minutes now. This is very apparent. And also, where are these other 199 episodes? And if that is your case, you're very young and we love you. And thank you for watching this.
Yes, skibbity toilet.
They call it skibbity toileting, and it's the craze sweeping all high schools. Those are my favorite stories, like when they do that, where it's like they'll go on to describe something. Like one of them was like the punching game. And then it was like, you're just describing high school boys punching each other, which has existed, trust me.
As long as there have been high school boys and fists.
Or the other one will be like, they have blowjob parties where they put lipstick on and do blowjobs. And it's like, I wish. Or I wasn't invited to this. Like, either I wasn't getting the right...
I need to know that didn't happen.
Yes.
I need to know that that's a myth.
To be clear, Andy and I, neither of us went to the Euphoria High School, I think.
We did not go to the Euphoria High School. Not remotely, not one bit. But the other thing is that if you've been enjoying our podcast for 200 episodes, and we know that there's several of you that probably have been, we also have now started a Patreon. So you can support us via patreon.com/silverliningsplayback. And you'll get some access to some exclusive content and some other fun things as we figure out what Patreon is.
And also, Andy said if you like us, but if you hate us, you know what would really get back at us is if you gave us money on Patreon, because I don't want your money, haters. So the last thing you should do is go sign up and give us money every month.
Oh, that would really grind my gears. You people that have been hate listening, if you're like,
don't you do it.
I want money from fans, not haters. Oh, that would piss me off if the haters gave us money.
Yeah. So, oh my God, if you donated to like the biggest tier and then sent us a message or like, I'm doing this out of hate, that would eat me up inside.
Oh, that would make me so. I'd create an even higher tier.
And I bet you wouldn't. I bet you wouldn't sign up for that one.
Yeah, I bet you. Yeah,
you coward.
You won't.
Coward.
You coward.
I dare you. Well, and also, if you do hate us, one of the things that I know we're going to be having with the tiers is that you can influence the show. So you could really break us if you wanted to. Make us watch.
You have the opportunity to suggest movies, to vote on themes, to vote on actual films that we may watch for this podcast is some of the things you'll be able to do if you donate to our Patreon.
Yeah, you could make us watch Garfield: A Tale of Three Kitties. If you wanted to.
You could make Garfield: A Tale of Three Kitties and then force us to watch it.
Yeah.
The only thing I will say is that we have both unequivocally said we will not watch the first Garfield movie.
Yeah, that's just, that has to be true to our vision, because we imagine, if you go back and listen to that episode, we watched the second one without seeing the first one, and we imagined what the first one was, and we just want to leave that unspoiled.
And we don't want to know otherwise.
Yeah. So that's very important to us. So let's hold that dear.
Literally any other movie.
Yeah. And also don't suggest the first Caddyshack if you enjoyed our Caddyshack too, but that's just because that's a good movie and we'll enjoy it.
The first Caddyshack is actually good.
Yeah. So.
But yeah, it's exciting. So, we're trying to branch out and hopefully, we become rich and famous.
That is why we've been doing this. And we've been very open about that, and so now this is finally, we slow played it, but this is the cash grab.
Yeah, this is the cashing in. This is the phone and then the money.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is coasting to the finish line.
And I think the reason for that is because this movie, our 200th movie, made us realize it could all end at any moment.
It really could.
Yeah. Because look at that. We're right back on topic. So.
Oh, look at that.
Yeah.
Although I would argue that what we were talking about was germane to the podcast in a way that most of our rants are not.
That is true. Yeah. But we are here. We're tasked with discussing the bucket list, and that is what we will do. So let's get into it. Like this is a movie I had not seen. I don't think you had seen it either, but it was sort of, I feel like, an infamous movie. I think that's also why we picked it for our 200th episode of like, we knew of it,
Yeah, this is a movie that is in that rarefied air with a movie like Single White Female, where everybody's aware of the movie, but nobody actually watched it. And it had an impact on like the lexicon and a little bit of a zeitgeist thing. Because this essentially coined the term bucket list, which, has come into language and is something that people consistently refer to.
Yeah. Yeah. And so to recap the plot of this movie, if people haven't seen it, Jack Nicholson and Morgan Freeman are roommates. Jack Nicholson becomes obsessed with Morgan Freeman and starts trying to date his boyfriend, kills him with a stiletto heel, eventually just tries to take over Morgan Freeman's life.
And just slowly replaces his life.
Yeah.
Yes.
Wait.
Gets his haircut similarly.
They do get their haircut similarly. You could argue.
And that's true. Yeah.
Hold on. No, sorry. This is, they both are diagnosed with late stage cancer and have months to live. And as you heard in the opening clip, Morgan Freeman has the titular bucket list, and they decide to embark on together, trying to cross off as many things on the list before they both die or kick the bucket. And it's also sort of a classic comedy pairing. They're an odd couple of like, Jack Nicholson is a rich, selfish asshole, and Morgan and also in the movie as well.
Yes, yeah. He's not only a rich, selfless asshole, he plays one in the movie.
Right. And then Morgan Freeman plays like a salt of the earth mechanic who he put all of his
blue-collar guy.
Yeah, he's a blue-collar guy. He put all his dreams aside to raise a family. And now he's having this like FOMO on life because his life has been in service of others.
And then the irony is that Jack Nicholson is the proprietor of the hospital. And one of the opening scenes is he's at some sort of budget hearing where he says, nope, nobody's going to get the room to themselves. This is a hospital for the people. And then he gets sick. And lo and behold, he has to share a room with somebody, even though that's the last thing he wants. Right.
Yeah, it's literally he starts demanding that he get a private room, and he's reminded by his long-suffering assistant that, you can't do that. The optics would be terrible. You have to share a room, and that's how their unlikely friendship is sparked.
Yeah, and then the movie's essentially a travelogue of them ticking items off of their bucket list, and they both grow as human beings.
And then they both die.
They do both die.
Yeah, which is, I guess, a spoiler, but also, I mean, you really should have seen that coming, like, based on
Yeah, when two elderly male actors star in a movie called The Bucket List about facing life at the late stages of terminal cancer, they both die.
Yeah. And also, you're told about Jack Nicholson's death in the opening scene via voiceover from Morgan Freeman.
I was shocked that they got Morgan Freeman to do the voiceover for this. I was a little surprised by that.
Why, you thought that's not really his thing?
I was like, interesting choice.
I did you wonder that, like, sincerely, do you think that was in the script, or do you think once they got Morgan Freeman, they were like, well, he has to narrate?
I have to assume that once they got Morgan Freeman, that they were like, no, let's get some voiceover in here because it'd be silly not to.
Yeah, because there's definitely yeah, like it sort of felt not tacked on, but it didn't feel integral to the plot, the narration. And it's a smart move. I actually think it's incredibly savvy of them to do it. And then you had a great moment where he, at the end, when he's dying, he writes a letter to Jack Nicholson. And so we get that voiceover while we're watching him die, essentially, you know.
But he also has like that sort of like third person omniscient narrator bit, because it seems like he's narrating from beyond the grave in the very last bit as well.
Well, he definitely is, because he's, again, in the opening scene, he's an omniscient narrator, but we don't know it because he's talking about Jack Nicholson's death. But then twist is that he dies before Jack Nicholson. And so his death, like he's already dead by the time, but he knows the details of how he died. And they're buried. Their remains are left side by side on a mountaintop in the Himalayas. Continuing a long tradition of movies where people's ashes are put into coffee cans, a la The Big Lebowski and, you know, countless others. But that's a pro.
And it's the same chock full of nuts coffee can.
Yeah. Is that... Do you think Chock full of nuts, this is their very hyper specific product placement? Like they're paying a lot of money to, like, look, nobody buys our coffee for coffee, but people, I think if they knew they could perfectly fit one human body's remains in it, that's like, it's cheap enough. They'll dump out the coffee. So just keep making movies where, you know,
I'm just picturing the R&D meeting. They're like, hey, boss, I don't know if you knew this, but the volume of our coffee cans is exactly enough to hold one cremated human's remains.
How do you know that?
It's a long story that I don't have time to get into. But
also, have you seen Jim? He didn't come into work today.
Okay, it's a short story that I don't feel like getting into.
That's how it happened, I think.
But yeah, that is sort of a weird thing. And their remains get left with the bucket list between them.
Also,
at the end.
I'll just throw it out for any loved ones of mine that are listening. If you can get a sponsorship from Chock full of nuts, I'd be happy for my remains to be put in one of their coffee cans, but only if you get some cash for it.
I insist that my remains be put in a can of Chock full of nuts. And I don't want to be cremated.
And I then
figure it out.
Yeah. And I then also, Andy, I don't know if you're willing to commit to this, but I think someone should be tasked with going to a mountaintop in the Himalayas and leaving both coffee cans there.
I actually insist that mine be shaken into the wind.
But on top of the Himalayas, right?
But on top of a mountain in the Himalayas. Like go to Nepal or Bhutan and shake it into the wind.
Yeah, well, let's do that. I want that too, then. Here's the thing: you have to wait so that we both get it at the same time. So, like, when Andy dies decades before me,
right,
under mysterious circumstances,
it's not that mysterious.
He's with Jim. Just hold on to that can, and then release us both into the Himalayas. Yeah.
Yep. That's legally binding now because we did it on a podcast.
And if we can get...
And on video.
Yeah, and on video. Also, if we can get one of the stars of Will and Grace to be the person to go to the top of the Himalayas, that would be great.
Come on, Eric McCormick.
I was hoping for Mullally, but I'll take whoever we can get.
I just thought McCormick was the funnier one, because I guarantee if you ask people to name stars of Will and Grace, that he would be like sixth.
And he's Will.
He's Will.
He's the first name, and you're not wrong. You're not wrong.
I'm not
at all.
wrong. It's definitely Deborah Messing, Sean Hayes, Megan Mullally for sure. Probably a few other extras or like one-off guests. Like Nick Offerman was on that show for a bit. That's actually I think how he and Megan Mullally met.
I was getting ready to jump in with that. That's exactly how they met. And look, if they wanted to go together to Nepal and spread our remains, I think that'd be a nice trip for them, and that'd be a nice trip for us, I think.
I think it'd be good. So let's make that happen, people.
All right, cool. So,
all right. So why is this movie bad?
Because it's not good, I think, is the first. I'll say I'm with the setup. I actually like the setup a lot.
100%. Yeah.
It's, again, it's classic, these are two guys from two. And I like the leveling of, because a hospital is a place where people from different backgrounds would be stuck in the same room. And I think they justify why this guy who's dedicated his life to running these shitty privatized hospitals would have to then be hoisted by his own petard and be stuck in a room with someone. I thought all that was great. I thought it started off really solid. And I like the idea of them doing a bucket list together. I think where the movie starts to stumble is immediately after that clip we played, because I don't think the bucket list part ends up being all that interesting.
I'm with you. One of the thoughts I had while watching this movie is that I would love to see a play, which I don't think could happen now because Jack Nicholson is pretty concisely retired from acting.
And I think super happy to be retired from acting.
I think fine with it.
Yeah.
But I think it would be an amazing play to watch those exact characters like musing about the end of their life in the hospital room together. Like, I think that could make a really excellent like stage play.
Well, even, or just play or movie about, because what never quite happens, even though it feels like it's setting it up, is that you almost expect this to be an Ebenezer Scrooge type of story where, this Jack Nicholson character at the end of his life maybe has some kind of revelation about his life's work and how he's treated hospitals. And it's sort of this weird fantasy. It's a very like rich guy creating his own charity instead of giving the money to help people kind of vibe of, you help one person too much by like flying him on private jets and doing this elaborate thing instead of helping all of these people who have passed through your hospitals over the years by making their experience better at all.
Right. And if anything, he almost corrupts Morgan Freeman's character.
He does, kind of, because Morgan Freeman seemed pretty happy in the beginning. I think that's some of the stumbling as well, is that I don't feel like it quite... Morgan Freeman's a great actor, so it felt credible enough. But when he's telling his wife, I have to do this, and like just going with this guy, I don't know that the movie sold this idea well enough as to why he was agreeing to do this trip, except that he had the list and this guy has money. Well,
and especially because the original bucket list was like sort of altruistic things, even from the opening clip, laugh until I cry, help a stranger, total stranger out for good. Those are not like what people typically associate with bucket list type items. It's more the things they end up doing, like going on safari, riding motorcycles on the Great Wall of China, going to Nepal, places like that. Yeah, which skydiving. Skydiving.
Yeah, which is such a classic movie move, of a bucket list that feels like a movie's idea of a bucket list. Is not to say that a lot of people don't skydive when faced with these.
They also somehow get to sit on top of the Great Pyramid,
and then they kind of hand wave past it with a joke about them saying they don't know how they're going to get down. Like, so they're sort of acknowledging that it's impossible that they're up there.
And then it immediately cuts to the next scene where they're somewhere else.
Right. Yeah. Which I guess is as good of out that you can do. But yeah, there's a lot of weird. There's also they have a race at one point where they're seemingly trying to kill each other. It's when Morgan Freeman finally loosens up and he's like ramming an expensive sports car into Jack Nicholson's sports car that they're racing each other on a private track. But yeah, right. I think that's where the movie starts to fall apart, is just it had a great setup and a great premise and two great actors. And then what it actually chose to do wasn't that fun. I also just, it felt weird in that. So we talked about like the Jack Nicholson side of, I thought that he was setting up obviously to learn and grow, which didn't quite happen. On the Morgan Freeman side, it really felt like they were laying these breadcrumbs of he's a trivia genius. He knows all this stuff. And I thought they were going to do more with that as like some kind of bucket list. And then they don't really, it's just a part of his character, but it never really quite.
It doesn't pay off in any meaningful way. Yeah.
Yeah, like
It's not like he gets to go on Jeopardy or something like that.
That's where I thought we were headed. I thought he was going to go on Jeopardy, or even if just, I mean, Jack Nicholson has a bunch of money. He hires Alex Trebek to like come to the hospital room and like pretend to do a Jeopardy, or his family does like, I thought we were going to get some kind of, that his dream was to have been on Jeopardy and maybe he doesn't have enough time to do it, but someone finds a way to fulfill that dream for him because the trivia was so embedded throughout.
Because that's like the first scene is that he's like rattling off trivia questions in the garage he works in. And
and so it's just, I mean, it ends up being like a part of his character but not a part of his arc, which I thought was strange. And then with Nicholson, again, you get all this like he's kind of been a selfish jerk, and then they just kind of go like, they needlessly misdirect you by him saying that he doesn't have a kid, and then he goes, "Oh, I do have a kid, I just didn't know you well enough." And then it has like a late third act reconciliation with this daughter that has been an off-screen character who doesn't even get to talk. We just see her. She doesn't even have dialogue.
Yeah.
And so again, that felt out of left field when I felt so I think that's the thing is like the second and third half, parts of the movie don't feel connected to what the first 35 minutes set up.
Yeah, it makes me wonder is that maybe this original script, because it was on the Hollywood blacklist, is that maybe it was a more ambitious script and then it got sanitized for consumption.
I could see that a lot of the things are flashy trailer. It does kind of reek of a studio interference that, like, it'd be fun if the two old guys skydove or like we're on top of pier, like, because they're all visual choices that I think someone thinks would play to an audience versus all the emotional beats that feel satisfying, because all that stuff that's set up in that thing, which I could believe are in the original script, are like, because Jack Nicholson at one point he says like, I want to kiss the most beautiful girl in the world, and he crosses that off when he meets his granddaughter and he kisses her on the cheek, and like she's the most beautiful, which I thought that was nice. And like that was one of my favorite things in the whole movie. Like I would say, even though I don't think we're pivoting yet, that would have been a silver lining for me. Right. But you have that like help a stranger ends up being Morgan Freeman, because Morgan Freeman was a stranger to him at the beginning. So it's like, I feel like the end felt connected to the things being set up in the beginning. But I could entirely believe that someone came in and gutted the middle of this movie and replaced it with, it'd be hilarious if old guys did these things.
Right. I could also see that like the original script, maybe even being that they never leave the hospital, that maybe it's all just musings about the things they would do because these are two elderly gentlemen with terminal cancer, that it like maybe they, it's all like dream sequences essentially. And then it's revealed that they never actually leave the hospital or something really dark.
Or, I mean, even just they're too sick to leave the hospital. So it is Morgan Freeman's wife, and maybe Jack Nicholson and his daughter aren't estranged. So maybe it's like Jack Nicholson's daughter and Morgan Freeman's wife kind of seeing the list. They find the list and they're trying to put together as many things as possible. So they put together a Jeopardy game in the hospital room. They bring the granddaughter in, and like that crosses that off. Like that they find a way to do the bucket list from the hospital room. I actually do think would have been a more interesting and satisfying movie.
God, I think we're pretty good at coming up with movies there, Joel. I don't know. I think that's. Yeah. So if you want to remake the bucket list, holler at your boys.
Or support us on Patreon.
Silver Linings Playback.
Yeah.
Patreon.com/Silver Linings Playback.
Also, I think we're about ready to pivot, but one other thing occurred to me as we were talking about this that I don't know if you thought about this. A lot of what this movie is trying to accomplish, I think, was actually done well by that early Simpsons episode where Homer eats the blowfish and then thinks he's going to die, and he comes up with the list of things he wants to do before he dies, and then spends too much time with Abe and has to cross a bunch of it off. And like that, I think that's the vibe that this movie, again, I'm not saying like The Simpsons did it. I think there is still room.
Simpsons did it.
But I think there was still room to do this movie. But I think that tonally nailed what I think this movie should have been. Like, that's the lane this movie should have been operating in, was that early Simpsons episode.
No, I think you're right. And I think that, like, because really the movie is really just a treatise on wealth privilege.
It is. And it also weirdly feels like that, but written by rich people. So there's not really an examination of where the wealth came from.
No, it's not like...
Yeah, it's not wealth is bad. It's just like, yeah, if you're wealthy, then I guess if you meet a poor person, you should let them fly on your jet.
Because, you know, were I to write a bucket list of the things I want to do and the things I was able to do, those would be different lists.
Right. Yeah. And that's not to be confused with the bucket list that I wrote that just is the Dune 2 popcorn bucket. That is on a list of things to do. But that's separate.
Yeah, that's a whole other thing.
Yeah.
I also have a list of buckets that I want to purchase.
Yeah. That's just that's for Home Depot.
Another bucket list because I would like to buy some buckets.
Yeah, that's just a Home Depot wish list that Andy's put together.
No, because I'm really set on becoming a go-go drummer outside of a DC metro station.
Yep.
And so I need to buy a lot of buckets.
Oh man, you're making me nostalgic for that was my bus driver in elementary school. Listened to I believe it was WPGC that played all of the go-go music, and I used to hear that all the time driving to school. And yeah, if you haven't, do yourself a treat and find that. And yeah, Andy, please. I think that's a worthy pursuit.
Yeah. So good night, everybody.
We still got to do the silver linings.
Oh, we got to do the silver linings. Oh,
yeah.
Okay. And then I'll start learning to go drum.
Yeah, which is, again, that's on your bucket list, which is, so I guess that's interesting because it's now both a bucket list of buckets, but also a bucket list of now you want to learn the drum. So it's become dual purpose.
Yes, it's a bucket list.
Mm-hmm.
It's a bucket list.
It's a list of buckets for your bucket list.
Yes, I have a bucket list for my bucket list. There's a bucket list that's part of my bucket list.
Yeah. We did it.
Yeah. All right.
So yeah, that thing you mentioned. Let's officially enter that one into the record. The beautiful girl in the world is the daughter.
I mean, that was about as saccharine a moment as you could have, but I like it. I liked it.
No, I think it worked, and I think it's right.
It was perfect.
Yeah. No, it is, especially for. I mean, because Jack Nicholson it's a pretty shallow thing to put on the list, and he's a guy that we see in an earlier scene. He, I'm sure not joins the Mile High Club because I'm sure his character joined there long ago, but has, relations. I don't know why I'm being so coy about it, but he obtains
for that YouTube. It's now we're on YouTube. We don't want to get demonetized.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they're very strict. So and also, the kids that are watching this, they really hate sex in movies. They're very anti-sex scene. So, well, let's just say he obtains carnal knowledge. That's better, right? of the flight attendant on their private jet.
Yeah.
Yeah. I hope that's better.
I know we've pivoted, but it's sort of mentioned that Morgan Freeman and his wife are very much in love with each other, and they're the only people that they've ever dated or been with. But at one point, Jack Nicholson buys Morgan Freeman a prostitute. Yeah, he does hire a sex worker, and then it's made stranger because Morgan Freeman views that as the sign that he should go home to his wife. Because he doesn't know. He just thinks it's a woman at a bar. And she's like, I have a room. Do you want to come into my room? And he turns her down. He's like, I'm married. And then he says to Jack Nicholson, how did you know I would say no? And Jack Nicholson says, I didn't. Which implies he for sure was like, yeah, whatever happens. Either you're going to go home to your wife or you're going to cheat on her. But either way, I'm paying for it. I don't know. It's on me, pal.
Yeah.
But no, to actually pivot, Jack Nicholson and Morgan Freeman are phenomenal actors.
I mean, they're two of the greatest of our lifetimes, for sure. I don't even think that's in doubt. I love them both so much, and I'm happy to see them on a movie screen always. Yeah, no, they and they both do really good work in this movie, I think. Yeah, I think the movie is playing to their strengths because, I mean, we joked about it before, but obviously Jack Nicholson is playing a very Jack Nicholson character of he's a selfish jerk, which is what he won an Academy Award for playing. Like one of them. Or more than one, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah. But a cantankerous asshole.
Yeah, that's definitely his wheelhouse. Morgan Freeman, is both an omniscient narrator, which makes him like God. So this makes it like Bruce Almighty. And also he's a Salt of the Earth character, which again, he's
done many, many times.
Yeah. I mean, you could argue Salt of the Earth and narrator is Shawshank Redemption. Like it's
$1 Million Baby.
So these are both gears that we love to see both of them in. They're obviously great together. They're both adding a lot of value to the movie. And the movie is obviously built around the two of them, where like the rest of the cast isn't that recognizable. It's not like stacked with a lot of other cameos or anything, because they know.
Yeah, Sean Hayes is by far the most recognizable, and he has a really small part. Things considered,
he gets a lot of screen time, but not a lot to do, because being Jack Nicholson's assistant, he's there most of the time, but he doesn't do a lot. But they're both great, and I enjoyed them. And we mentioned it before, but just to say it again, I think it's the right move. If anyone makes any movie with Morgan Freeman in it, you're gonna ask him to narrate something. That's a pro move, even the Dark Knight.
Not?
Even the Dark Knight did it, like to a sense where, it's like, hey, Lucius, I need you to operate the surveillance equipment. And that was basically done so that a voice in Batman's head for the climactic battle scene was just Morgan Freeman narrating where bad guys were. Smart move. Also, just now that I'm saying that, this is coming a few weeks after the Academy Awards, we got a Arnold Schwarzenegger, Danny DeVito team up. I didn't even think about. We have a Lucius Fox Joker team up.
Yeah, we do. Yes.
So do with that what you will. Write that fan fiction.
God, could you imagine a bucket list? It's the exact same movie, except it's Lucius Fox and the Joker.
That's more like it, Mr. Joker. Yeah. Also,
wait till they get a load of me.
Oh my God. Okay, look, James Gunn, if you're listening, the Joker's bucket list is 100% a movie that we should write. You've already made 2 Joker movies with Joaquin Phoenix. Just let Andy and I write a movie where the Joker thinks he's dying and he has a list of things he wants to do before he dies.
Oh, that sounds like a Frank Miller comic. The Joker's bucket list. That sounds like very like 80s Frank Miller.
Because it also feels really fun in that some of them would be terrifying, but some of them would just be, he shows up somewhere, someone thinks they're going to be killed, and it's actually, he wants to do something really, he wants to pie them in the face, or he wants to like
one of them is like spend a nice day with Harley.
Yeah, exactly. Like have a picnic in Central Park, or, like it would be a weird mix of, you'd never know if the thing was terrifying.
If it was going to turn into abject chaos, or it's just, like read my favorite book again.
Yeah. It also feels like the Joker would get bored with his own bucket list because he doesn't seem like he has the attention span for it. So he'd keep abandoning it or changing it.
Well, and then there's a scene where eventually Batman obviously has to thwart him. And then Joker explains, it's like, oh, Bats, I'm dying, as a matter of fact. So let me destroy the Gotham's water supply.
And I'm taking you with me. Yeah, exactly. Also, I love that you did the Mark Hamill Joker, because that's right.
That's the best Joker.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was pretty good out of pocket. I think that's the first time I've really taken a swing at that.
That's good. Yeah, no, I enjoyed it. Also, yeah, I like, obviously him and Kevin Conroy are the GOATs overall, but did love seeing Keaton immediately just fall into the, correct, like, reaction. Yep. God bless him.
Yeah. But yeah, like this, this movie is boring.
Yeah, like I said, I feel like it starts on good footing, and then it just like it loses steam pretty immediately. At the moment when now we're in road trip, odd couple old guy, like it should have all the momentum in the world once they set out to do this. And it loses all of its momentum pretty immediately instead, weirdly.
Well, especially because all of it feels like, what would a 12-year-old want to do if money and time were no object?
Yeah, it's almost like a weird, like, Brewster's Millions idea of a bucket list. Like, I have all this money and I need to spend it before I die is almost which is a much more cynical movie than it should have been, but I think is what it kind of falls into.
Yeah, but you forget about it to an extent because of how talented Jack Nicholson and Morgan Freeman are, and because of how charismatic and fun to watch they are. But yeah, and this movie starts from a really good place, and it's a great premise, but then it just delivers like the safest version of that movie.
Right. And I do think the most interesting choice, and I think if they hadn't done all the other stuff, the idea that Morgan Freeman wanted to climb the mountain, but it was the wrong time of year. And so again, I do kind of like your theory that there was an original script that got, studio noted to death, because like, I think this is a good idea. And I could believe it was in the original script of like, he wants to climb this mountain. They get there and it's the wrong season, so they can't do it. And then because I did find it touching at the end that Sean Hayes does take their remains and puts them on top of the mountain. All of that I actually liked. I thought that was really solid.
Yeah, I did too.
And I think if everything else took place in the hospital or was like lower, instead of just lots of money, lots of destinations, that was the one place they tried to take him, but they took him so late that his health was already at a point that he really probably couldn't climb the mountain anyway. And then also the mountain, like it was just bad weather or whatever. Yeah. And then so he never gets to do it, but that's his last left to do thing on the list. And so they do it for him. I actually think that's a very sweet ending to the movie. Yeah.
I would agree. And I will say, Rob Reiner is the director. Like, he knows how to set the right emotional tone in the scenes that he directs. And I think that happens a lot. And I like Rob Reiner. I'm a fan, as we said at the top. So, that's cool.
No, Rob Reiner is a great director. I mean, it's, for a long time growing up, A Few Good Men was one of my favorite movies. Like, just, I always really love that. It's a great Jack Nicholson movie, too.
Yeah.
That he was nominated for, like that you get that amazing outburst scene. But yeah, I think Rob Reiner is a director of restraint. Like, again, we said he doesn't really have a really like auteur style or anything. And then he's just he's a very just efficient director that knows what the job of directing is, does it well, doesn't get in the way. And yeah, he lets his 2 stars carry the movie. And I think that's all his instincts are right. Yeah, I think the script fails this movie, but I also I'm with you that I tend to believe that a script that was on the blacklist that got bought like this, probably the original version had all the stuff.
It was not as safe as this movie was.
No, it probably had all the stuff we liked in it, and then someone along the way at a studio.
They should go on a safari.
What's hilarious is old people skydiving. And also we're going to shoot that scene and make it very clear that I'm not even sure that Jack Nicholson and Morgan Freeman were in an airplane, but they definitely were not the people who jumped out of that plane.
God, no.
Nor should they be. But I think when you're building a movie around 2 older characters, why have them skydive if they're definitely not going to skydive anyway?
Well, and that's the other thing that the movie, I think it should have done and didn't, is that when they're doing, like, even if you have them do the skydiving, the motorcycle ride on the Great Wall of China, the auto race, like, if at some point they both realize that this, even though these are bucket list items, something feels hollow about it, and they start to realize that what's actually important is reconnecting with, my estranged daughter. And then when I kiss my granddaughter, oh, that's kissing the most beautiful girl in the world. And like, that's what actually has value. And I feel like that's maybe the tack the movie should have taken, and maybe the original script did. But this version did not.
No, this version has a weird, like, money's awesome and doing stuff is awesome vibe to it.
And while I agree that money is awesome and doing stuff is awesome, There's more.
Yeah, that's, money and doing stuff is a younger man's game. I think as you get older in life, you start really appreciating the things that are more important, like competing on Jeopardy and having granddaughters.
Yeah.
That's what it's all about.
Yes, Jeopardy and granddaughters.
Well, I don't put an age limit on sex workers. I think like any age,
that's
really,
fair.
Like
if you, have fun,
both for you and for them. Like just hire older women. Have a gamut of human experience. I think.
Yeah, just live life. That's the lesson here. Live life
to the fullest, and then when you die, have your cremains put in a chock full of nuts. That's right, chock full of nuts. It could be chock full of you.
Did you just coin the phrase cremains? The portmanteau of cremation remains. Did you invent that? We should copyright that because that's gold.
I think I did by accident. But yeah, I also, that was a freebie, chock full of nuts, ad product placement.
Yeah, so that's free ad copy that you can get. And if you don't have a product that you want to have us advertise, you can just give us money via our Patreon.
Yeah. And then we'll go to Nepal.
Chock full of nuts.
And buckets.
Silver Linings Playback is a production of HoboTrashcan.com. If you enjoyed the show, please rate or review it on Apple Podcasts. Hear more great shows on the Peak Sloth Podcast Network.